Hello, classmates. This is Robin Short. As some of you know, I teach a restorative justice class in a face-to-face program, and I'm in the process of developing an online graduate certificate that will focus on restorative justice. Restorative justice is a process for achieving justice that helps to restore the dignity of all people involved in a wrongdoing, and it puts into place a framework for each person involved to have the opportunity to share in their mutual human development. The foundational guidepost of all restorative practices is the caring respect of the community and the individuals in which the harm is situated. This means that when a harm or a wrong has taken place, the respect for all individuals guides the process for making right the wrong. In considering how to right the wrong, a restorative approach considers the needs of the person harmed, the individual who created the harm, and their shared communities. Much of this work is conducted through a face-to-face dialogue process that takes place in a circle. In restorative justice, we call this a peacekeeping circle. The circle describes not just the way that we organize the chairs, but also a willingness to share power. And that's crucial because when power is shared and the unequal relationships between us are leveled, then it becomes safe to speak things that we normally cannot say. The circle process can be very powerful, and one concern that I have about taking this process into a digital space is that the element of the human connection will be lost, or it might be lost. In the next few minutes, I will walk you through how the circle process works, discuss the challenges this face-to-face process may experience as we transition into an online learning environment, and some solutions I've developed to overcome these challenges. I hope you find this presentation interesting, and I really look forward to hearing your ideas and feedback that may help me evolve my thinking. So let's get started. Circles are built on four premises. The first premise is that every person wants to be connected to others in a good and positive way. The second is that every person shares core values that indicate what connecting in a good way means to them. And three, connecting to others positively and in accordance with one's values is difficult, and it's increasingly difficult when we are in the midst of conflict. And lastly, the fourth premise is that when a space is safe, people can discover their core values and their deep desire to be positively connected. So let's take a look at the elements of circle keeping. First, there is the inner support, and these are the principles of restorative justice that I am not going to go into great detail about here, as well as the values that the group has developed utilizing a consensus process prior to the start of the circle. There's also the outer support. And the elements of that is the behavioral guidelines that are established prior to the start of the circle. This can be done actually sitting in circle or in a classroom environment. It's often done at the start of the classroom. The behavioral guidelines are sometimes called norms, and these are norms that everyone agrees on and that everyone, through a consensus process, commits to adhering to during circles. And then you have the circle keeping itself. This is the circle keeper, who is typically a restorative justice facilitator. The circle keeper is a participant in the circle process. She models the behavioral guidelines. She develops the questions for the topic that will be discussed in circle. The circle keeper also opens with a ritual. The ritual might be something that is spiritual or religious, something that is meaningful to the group of people who have convened to have a discussion about this particular topic. Rituals are not always a part of circle, but I think that they're an important part of it. And then lastly, there's the talking piece. And the talking piece is typically something that holds symbolic meaning either to the circle keeper or to the group itself. It might have symbolic meaning around the topic that's being discussed. Most importantly, what the talking piece does is it ensures that the person who has the talking piece is the only person speaking. But I often like to think about the talking piece as a listening piece, because if you don't have the talking piece in your hand, then your sole responsibility is to listen and to engage active listening skills in the process. So, one of my greatest concerns about transitioning to the digital space is that we're going to lose the interconnectedness that happens when people convene in a circle. There's something that I think of that's just almost magical about what happens in circle. There is a distribution of power, non hierarchical, comes together in a very kind of democratic way to engage in what is usually a difficult subject matter. And a lot of healing takes place in this process. So let's take a look at how I intend to um, overcome some of these challenges by transitioning to the online space. First, let's take a look at the consensus process and the behavioral guidelines. These will take place utilizing Canvas in group discussions. So before we ever actually move to the online space, we will have talked through the consensus process, and we will have explored our behavioral guidelines and ensured that everyone has agreement on what those are. I'll develop a one sheet that I'll send to everyone so that they have that in front of them when we do convene utilizing the Zoom platform. I do believe that it's really important to open circles with a ritual. And so, what I will probably ask the students to do is to have a candle available to them at the start of the circle. Maybe take about 3 minutes prior to when we all log on to Zoom. And I will provide them with an audio meditation that each of them will be able to take themselves through the process. So they'll light their candle, they'll launch their audio, and at the same time, prior to convening through Zoom, everybody will experience the same meditation to help prepare them physiologically, to prepare them spiritually, to prepare them mentally to engage in the subject matter that we're going to convene. What I'll also do is prepare them with a graphic that has a photo of each of them literally in a circle. And I'm going to start with, let's just say I start with a person who's like in the noon position, and we'll move around clockwise. So each person will see the other person's face. They'll be able to see the faces of the people that they're sitting in circle with. And the talking piece will just be a verbal cue. So since they'll be sitting in circle and they'll be able to see who's, sitting next to them, quote unquote, they'll be able to say, I now pass my talking stick to Betty. And Betty will speak and then say, I now pass my talking stick to the person sitting next to her. And in this way, I'm hoping that we'll be able to mirror some of the activities that take place in face-to-face, and also work through that Zoom platform in such a way where there's not the confusion that sometimes happens about whose turn is it next to speak. And I really look forward to any input or ideas that each of you might have that can improve upon this. And I'm excited to explore it and see how it works. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.